All right, now that we're all set and ready to go, I'm going to try to keep this really informal. If you have questions or comments, raise your hand, speak out loud, whatever you want to do. Just interrupt me and we'll...
We're not a bashful group.
I'm sure you're not. I'm Tim Kuhn, my wife Faye. We're avid travelers. We can travel. We could easily be talking about a trip to Europe in a conventional way, or we can talk about riding a bicycle. And since I wanted to do something kind of unique, we're going to ride a bicycle. So,
good for you.
Real quick, I want to just explain to you a little bit about a touring bicycle. It is different than your regular bicycles that you see a lot of places. It's got 27 gears. It's got disc brakes, which are kind of up and coming as far as bicycles are concerned. And all the stuff we need to survive are in those two bags. And when Faye goes, Faye hasn't always gone, there are two more bags that hook onto the front. They are smaller, but we have to put everything in those bags. And so we keep it very lightweight. This tent, although when Faye goes, we don't tent quite as much as we're on bike. Something about having a shower, that kind of helps. Up front, sleeping bag, sleeping mat, pillow, and a thermal liner to keep add about 10 degrees to the bag. So everything that's important that I need to have with me all the time, like my insurance cards, are in the handlebar bag. It detaches quickly. I carry it with me off the bike all the time. Phone attaches, speedometer, odometer, water bottles. In this one, it has inner tube. That's the number one physical problem we have to deal with is flat tires. And so you keep that here where it's easy, so you don't have to dig down through the bag and get everything. When it's got 3 days of food, full water capacity, all the bags, it weighs about 85 pounds. So the bike itself weighs about 30. So we have to condense all of our existence down to about 40 pounds, 40 to 45 pounds.
Can I ask you a question about
Sure.
your bike?
Yeah.
Is that a standard seat? Because I rode a bike once for 26 miles and I thought I got to where I couldn't sit down. I had to just kind of pedal, however you do that. I couldn't sit down anymore. It was so uncomfortable.
All right, this is a Brooks saddle. It is very common among touring cyclists. It's made in Great Britain. It's called a saddle because it's made out of leather and it's very, very comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean your posterior won't hurt. It's a lot more comfortable than any other kind of bike seat.
Okay.
You do wear padded pants.
I do wear padded pants. And Faye said, well, aren't you going to wear your pants? I said, nah, maybe not. But the padded pants do help.
Okay.
But you spend hours and hours on a bicycle, the right parts of the body kind of get calloused up, so to speak, and you don't really feel that. I don't have that discomfort. Okay, so we're going to talk about seeing the world at 10 miles an hour, and that's about what we average is 10 miles an hour. You can kind of do the math. We average about, on our first trip, Faye and I averaged 65 miles a day. So that's basically what it amounts to. I'll share with you, you'll see a couple different configurations. This is my older bike, and on this trip we pulled a trailer. The trailer weighed about 70 pounds. It was our first trip. We kind of started to learn how to pack a little differently. The story behind this picture, this is the end of the ride in St. Augustine, Florida on the beach. We were more than grateful to have made it. Looking back at what we didn't know, it was a miracle we made it. Oh, I'm serious.
And tell them where we started.
We started this trip in San Diego, so 3,000 miles, 55 days.
And you're still married?
You know what? I wouldn't do it without her. At least these first few trips. she was my cheerleader on the long climbs, and I really appreciated having her with me. You'll see some other characters as we go through some of the slides, and I'll introduce them to you later. The backstory of this is 7 days earlier than this picture. In Pensacola, Florida, we had a bike accident. Faye had a bike accident, I should say. We got to experience an ambulance trip to the hospital, an overnight stay in the hospital. I was ready to quit. She said, give me a couple days, let's see if we can finish. And we did. So.
Yay, Faye.
She was a tough cookie. Of course, I promised hotels the rest of the way. Okay, this is a commercially produced map of by Adventure Cycling. Adventure Cycling produces all our maps, and these laying up here are of one trip. I'll just show one real quick. It's turn-by-turn directions all the way across. And they break it up into 25 to 40 mile segments. On the back, very important information down here, places to stay, places to camp, all that information down here. Very important, at the top of this backside is the elevation. We know when the big hill climbs are, the big mountain passes. So we kind of have an idea. You can feel the paper, it's waterproof and it needs to be.
I'm impressed.
Adventure Cycling, we'll talk about them a little later, but this map basically shows you the trips that I've taken. Down the Pacific coast, across the southern tier, across the northern tier, across the middle. Done the southern tier twice. Wasn't very bright on that second one, but I did it twice. Yeah.
What was your favorite?
Oh, geez. That always is asked. I've got favorites for every one of them. Love the Pacific Northwest. The whole Pacific coast. I mean, it's an unbelievably scenic area. If you've ever been there, I'll show some pictures here in a minute.
You go up like Highway 101?
Highway 1
Oh,
down
that's
down the coast.
Yeah. Awesome.
We started up on the northern border and finished in San Diego. We didn't go ahead and go down the Mexican border. We'd kind of been there before and decided didn't need to do that one again. So, the northern tier, Glacier National Park is spectacular. Tough climb, but it was spectacular. Anywhere in the middle part of the United States, it's a lot like Kansas, very agricultural. You know, on the northern tier, across North Dakota, well, Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, 1,000 miles of cornfields and soybeans. I mean, that's what you see. Okay, the southern tier, I'll just very briefly tell you a little bit about it. Started in San Diego, goes to St. Augustine. As you notice, we spent weeks within miles of the southern border, the fence. I can verify to you the Border Patrol's working there. So, because it's very, very desolate. Sometimes 60 miles before you saw anything that resembled a town. But we saw the Border Patrol about every 15 minutes in some form. They worked up and down the highways all the time. We really recognized what their trucks and vehicles looked like. I mentioned 1,000 miles of cornfields. We saw 1,000 miles of cactus too. This was our Faye and I's first trip. We found out what it was like to bike in 110-degree heat. We saw some relatives of Faye's in Phoenix, and they, looking at us, all sunburned and looking kind of worn, they said, "You'll never make it." Well, we did.
Did
Yes.
you go, was it round trip or did you fly?
We take Amtrak to the
Okay.
start, usually.
Uh-huh.
Although Faye usually likes to fly because Amtrak takes forever. And then we usually fly home. And we take the bikes with us on Amtrak. Cheapest way to haul them. Safest too. They don't get broken up on the airplane. And when we get to our end, we hire a bike shop to take them apart and box them up and ship them home. So there's the border fence. Yes.
What time of the year did you go?
In the southern tier, we left in the third week in September, and it was still, we thought we'd beat some of the heat. Didn't work. It was hot. We carried 3 gallons of water almost on a regular, everyday basis, which added 25 pounds to the carry. So, but that we had to do that, or we wouldn't have made it. So, the border fence. This is near Hucumba, California. It's right down, literally on the border. The campground.
Just like El Paso.
What's that?
Looks just like El Paso.
Yes, and we went through El Paso, and I'm not going to go into that story. Hucumba really dried up a little town. I don't think there's probably 100 people live there anymore. It has a hot springs, and it was really famous back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. The movie stars went there for the hot springs. Interstate passed them by, and of course the town dried up, and there wasn't much there. I do want to share a few human interest stories with you, because when Faye and I do this, it's really about the places we see, and probably as importantly, the people we meet. And these people, that's why I'm going to share this human interest story with you. The lady be on your right, or I guess on your left. When we were in Hucumba, we got there and we thought we'd stay in a hotel. They had a little hotel with the hot springs. We got there and it was closed. They were remodeling, because the second time we went through there, it was open. But we had no place to go, and the campground, you had to knock the weeds down. They were about this tall. And we were really in a dilemma. And this was the first dilemma we faced on this beginning of this trip. We went into the public library and asked the lady for suggestions. She said, call this lady. Her name was Catherine Burnett, and we called her, and she said, well, let me do some checking. She was 88 years old. And as we find out later, she was very hard of hearing too. But we waited at the library for quite a while, and then here comes this little old lady walking up to us, and she was really straightforward. She said, I'm here to check you guys out. She said, I talked to the pastor, and he said if it was okay, if we appeared to be okay, she'd let us into the Methodist church to stay the night. That's what she did. She brought bedding for us and something to eat for breakfast. The story really doesn't end there. She became kind of a fan, and she kind of followed us on Facebook or on our blog, and she became really kind of connected to us to some extent. She kind of cheered us on. And this picture was actually taken about 6 years later when we were coming down the Pacific coast. She had, because of her age, she moved to her daughter's house in Portland. And she heard, we had communicated with her that we were headed down the Pacific coast, and she said, I've got to see you. And so when we were in Astoria, Oregon, it's about a 2-hour drive from Portland, her daughter brought Catherine over to see us.
That's sweet.
And we took a day off to spend time with her, and a special person. She didn't know that, but when we first started this in Hucumba, she was kind of a cheerleader to help us along the way. Anyway, she passed away a couple years ago at the age of 95, I think. And anyway, she was a special lady.
Cool.
So.
What is that?
We looked for alligators for a long time. Did finally see one. I think we stopped and looked off every bridge in southeastern United States, but we did finally find one. Okay, oops, skipped one. Faye and I both grew up on small farms, and I've got some farmers here, so we got a quiz. What are they harvesting here?
Sugar beets.
Nope,
Sugar cane.
sugar cane.
Okay, yeah.
We stopped and I always try to interact with people. You know, one of the great experiences of these kind of trips, you go to mom and pop cafes in these little towns, and you love to sit with the people, you know, every town's got them, you know, the table full of guys getting the world problem solved. And they're fun to interact with. So we talked to this guy and he showed us how this machine worked, so.
There was only one time there was a table full of women. So that tells you, men, who really, you know, gets together to talk it all over.
But we've talked with farmers, talked to a farmer in Montana that had 12,000 acres of wheat to cut. You know, they all have stories that they can tell, and it's so important to just sit and listen. If you listen, everyone's got some story to tell. This picture, this was my second trip on the Southern Tier. This is my twin brother. He went with me on this trip. His health was failing at this point in time, and this was one of the last trips he was able to do with me. So we're once again on basically the same beach that the earlier picture was on. Pacific Coast, we're going to kind of rip through this. Like I said, we camped on the beaches. Oregon and California and Washington have great park systems. And they have what they call hiker-biker sites. That's for bicycle people or hikers. And they only charge you $5 if you're a hiker or a biker. And you get a shower and a camp on the beach. So,
Thank you.
you know, there's some Pacific Coast pictures. I mean, it's a postcard every hill you climb. It's beautiful, beautiful scenery. Love the architecture of the old bridges. By the way, Highway 1 right now is closed because they've had another rock slide in Big Sur. Happens seems like about every 2 or 3 years. So we camped among the redwoods. The Pacific Coast route is very famous for foreign bikers. There are lots of them out there, mostly Dutch, Germans, some French. Anyway, we camped among the redwoods in a state park, and I think there were 5 countries represented of bikers, and we sat all late into the night just visiting with them and getting through the language barrier that we had. Okay, another quick human interest story. This is Jim Garrett. He is currently my bike partner. He lives in San Francisco. Retired Coast Guard, back there, Eric. It's me, the 2 people I want to talk about, and my brother is on the other side. The 2 people I wanted to mention, this is Sarah and Pedro. They were from Portugal. And we met them up in Oregon, we biked with them off and on. We all were gathered here at Jim's house in San Francisco. And Sarah and Pedro were having some visa issues, and they were having to go to the embassy there and try to sort some things out. But Sarah and Pedro were on their honeymoon. A 2-year honeymoon. Bicycling. Started in Boston. They were headed to the tip of Argentina. So we kept track of them until they got into Central America, but they were a fun couple. She was an attorney and he was in the hotel business. Very educated people and fun to be around.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And this is kind of the end of the ride picture with Faye and my brother, and this is the harbor at San Diego. And you can kind of see the arrangement. You can see the 2 bags in front and the 2 bags in back. Northern Tier starts in Anacortes, Washington, north of Seattle, south of Bellingham, goes to Bar Harbor, Maine. Beautiful ride. Always take pictures of wildlife when I get a chance. I was actually sitting at this picnic table, and this little doe, or little fawn, young deer, walked up, evidently could smell the peanut butter. I don't know, that's what You can see there. We eat lots of peanut butter. Peanut butter and romaine noodles. Yum. You can see this picture, you can see the snow in the background. This is Glacier National Park. This is up the road, they call it the Road to the Sun. Beautiful area, beautiful climb up that mountain. And it is a climb, because we had to get up closer to there. And of course, we finally got there. Other highlights of the Northern Tier, Niagara Falls. And it was pretty amazing to be following the river until you got there.
You know, one thing I might say, on a bicycle, you see Niagara Falls from a long distance away, and it takes you a long time to get to you're seeing the steam and the water, you know, you're seeing a distant view of Niagara Falls. And like I said, any place you go, it takes you hours to get there. So you're seeing from a long distance what's coming. You know, you're looking forward to finally getting there. But you build a lot of, you know, excitement to finally be able to see it. So
We did take a pretty good share of the day kind of doing touristy things there. This was just a beautiful picture I thought I'd throw in. This is Lake Pleasant in New Hampshire. Once again, we had no place to stay. Could not find a place. And we were talking at a convenience store about what we were going to do. And a lady overheard our conversation and said, call this person. And they had a little camper sitting on this lake. And it was going to be used that weekend. And she wanted $40. The trailer wasn't much. I don't think it was elaborate by any means, but we had nothing. So you know,
It's a roof over your head.
I think I gave her 50 and was really happy. So, but anyway, Faye actually took this picture. It was sunset over Lake Pleasant. A couple other people I want to mention. People we encounter on the trail. The young guy in the stocking cap. His name was John McDonald. He was 18 years old. He was biking from Kodiak Island, Alaska to Key West, Florida by himself.
Oh my, wow.
It was his senior project. He had to graduate from high school, you had to have a project. He designed his own trailer that he was pulling. And his project was, he contacted Subways all along his route and offered to do an advertisement for them for money or a place to stay. And he was raising money for his college education.
Cool.
And he was going to go to school in Florida. So he was basically biking to college from a very long way.
And he made it?
Yes, he did. And he raised $40,000.
Oh my, wow.
So
Yeah.
Wow.
he wore a bike jersey that said "Powered by Subway." And he did commercials. He carried video equipment with him, and he was a fun kid to be around. We biked with him for a while. Oh, the other couple, Port Stanley, Ontario, Canada. We were crossing Lake Erie on the northern side. This couple, once again, it was a 3-day weekend in Canada, and don't ask me what it was, but every place was booked. We could not find a place. We thought about sneaking up the beach and pitching tent and trying to escape without getting caught. It didn't sound very good since we were in Ford country. So anyway, this couple overheard us at the public library, and they said, come stay in our backyard. So we ended up camping in their backyard. They let us use their showers and their laundry, and they fixed us breakfast the next day. It's very heartwarming to know that there are people out there that are willing to take in strangers, I guess you might say. We had a bottle of wine on the deck and had a great discussion about public health care. Okay, this is the last one I want to mention. It actually runs really close to here.
Yeah.
I took this picture the other day coming home from up north. The sign you see right here, they put those up actually this last summer. That marks the trail across the United States. It's called the 76 Bike Highway. It's the Trans-America Highway for cyclists. And it will take, all you have to do is follow the arrows. It'll take you all the way across Kansas. You don't have to buy the maps, but they're not everywhere on this route. They're in Virginia for sure. They're in Kentucky. But anyway, this is about 35 miles north of here. COVID. This was last summer. I'm not very good at selfies, but you know, I do take them occasionally. I had flown to San Francisco, met Jim, and we were biking around San Francisco a little bit to make sure the bike was going to work. And of course, COVID, we really debated whether we were even going to go. Campgrounds were closed. We waited. We finally, they were starting to open up. Yellowstone was opening, and so we decided to go for it. We figured if we were camping in a tent, we weren't going to be around too many people. It kind of worked. This is Jim riding on Amtrak. We took Amtrak from San Francisco up to Eugene, Oregon to start this little trip. This is the McKenzie River east of Eugene. Beautiful ride. Followed it all the way up to McKenzie Pass. This was the first big climb of this trip. Sometimes you just have to go for it. I mean, this picture doesn't show how hard it was raining. We had 4,000 feet to climb in about 16 miles. And so it was a long, cold, very cold. The rain was cold. But when you get to the top of McKenzie Pass, this is a big lava field. It's about 100 square miles of lava fields, and nothing grows up there. This was from a volcano that erupted about the time Columbus landed on the other coast. So it's been around a long time. And you can see how wet we were.
Do you ever have to get off going up a pass and just walk your bike, or?
Oh, we try not to, but yeah, it does happen occasionally.
Okay.
I'll be honest, the worst climbing we had to do was in the Appalachians in the eastern part of the United States. They were a lot steeper than the climb we just talked about.
Wow.
Cash crop in Oregon, any guesses?
Yeah.
That's marijuana.
Oh.
Interesting story to this. When I stopped to take this picture, a guy comes roaring up in a pickup. They guard these fields 24 hours a day. And they thought I was getting ready to go pick me one. So I told him I didn't need one more thing to carry. So.
Especially trying to keep something alive. Because I just said.
We occasionally stop places that have little motivational sayings, and I threw this one in here because it means a lot to bicyclists. Particularly, it's the courage to continue that counts.
That's true.
Because you have down days. Some days it's not as pleasant as others. It's not always fun. The Painted Hills, I wish this picture was a little better because it's gorgeous out there in eastern Oregon. Too many shadows, but it's a beautiful area. But you should see at least what camping looks like on a bicycle. We do our own laundry usually. There was a little stream running off to the right there. And we washed our clothes on the rocks there and hung them out to dry. So,
But normally you do laundry every night.
we do laundry if we have a chance, but we always wash it out. This is cook stove that we use. I always have to have coffee in the morning, so I've got to be able to at least boil water. But Roman noodles also.
How many changes of clothes do you
What?
take? Do you take more than 2 changes of clothes?
Two bike outfits, one for off the bike. That's what we do. Pictures of
That's
Yellowstone.
pretty.
Always wanted to bike through Yellowstone, and this trip gave me that opportunity.
It is 6:30.
Okay, thank you. We did run into some problems. Road construction is always really interesting on a bike. This was a rock slide that closed the highway. we heard about it about 3 or 4 days ahead of time. We slowed our pace because the detour around this to Missoula, Montana, this was in Idaho, by the way. The detour around to Missoula was over 300 miles.
Oh my,
And we weren't going to do a 300-mile detour.
did they let you through?
We waited. The rumors were that they were going to get it open. They were at least going to get one lane open. And we did get through. Now we heard 2 days later they had another rock slide and it was closed again. So timing is important. Okay, more Yellowstone. The city of Twin Bridges, Idaho. They, several years ago, saw the advantages to cyclists coming through and maybe spending the night, because we all usually have to find, if there's a restaurant available, that's where I am. I'm not going to eat romaine noodles, I'm sorry. They built this little place for bicyclists. And you could camp outside, you could sleep inside, they had furniture, showers, little place to work on bikes. But the city did that just to kind of draw cyclists in. More pictures of rivers, of course, Yellowstone.
So pretty.
This elk decided to walk through our campground.
Another thing I might say, smells last a long time on a bicycle too. If you're smelling something in a car and you can't wait to get through that area, on a bicycle, it smells longer.
This is Jim, and I threw this in here because after Yellowstone, it's Grand Tetons. So, and of course, this is Coulter Bay in Glacier National Park. We spent a couple days there. I wish the sun would have been brighter because this is a gorgeous picture. Could have been better.
Still gorgeous.
It's still pretty, yeah.
So next picture. This is the highest climb we have ever made on a bicycle. Hoosier Pass. It's outside of Breckenridge. 11,539 feet, and it was a climb.
Wow.
Okay, these are a little out of order. The Transamerica starts in Yorktown, and it was put together for the bicentennial in 1976. This whole route was 1976. This is the Yorktown Victory Memorial, and that's where this actually officially starts. The whole route of the Transamerica is to show America's growth, as it went through the Appalachians, the Ozarks, across Kansas, up north to the Oregon Trail, and into Oregon. That's why they put the route to where they did. Williamsburg. We got to bike through Williamsburg. Of course, lots and lots of history around Virginia, or that part of Virginia. This is Patrick Henry's home. We actually took a little time off the bike to take it to her. And of course, we went by Madison's home and Jefferson's. The unfortunate thing about being in Charlottesville, if you remember a few years ago, they had a riot there and somebody got killed. We arrived that day in Charlottesville. Scary, scary time to be biking in that city. It was a city under siege. Never so happy to leave someplace. Never seen so many military assault type vehicles. It was not a place to be. Going to quickly go through the rest of these.
That's cool.
Throughout the Southeast, all kinds of churches let us stay. I mean, they advertised. This was the Bikers Hostel at a Methodist church. And they were more than happy to let us come in. Sometimes they just threw us the keys and said, spend the night, lock up when you leave. Nobody was there. The best place we ever stayed in a church was this one. They call this the cyclists call this the Hilton. And it's very nice. This was part of the youth center. They had pool tables, foosball tables, TVs, places to watch movies, showers, kitchen, fabulous facilities. Southern Baptist Church. It was always fun to stay at these churches, particularly on a night when the youth were there, because they had a million questions, and we loved interacting with them. Rural Appalachia, I did not take pictures of it. It's a very poverty-stricken area. I don't know what the answer is. I don't think we found an answer, but the poverty in that area is hard to take, really is. But everybody we talked to were happy and helpful, kind people. Some of them didn't have much, but they shared what they had. And that kind of lifts your spirits a bit from a humane part of it. Through this in there, every place we've been, both coasts, the south, the northeast, these were some of our friends on the road. The logging trucks, they never snuck up on you, I can tell you that. If we were going uphill, you could hear them roaring from behind. And if they were going downhill, you could hear them roaring because they were down in low gears trying to keep it under control. But I always like to stop and take a picture as they rolled by. So. Okay, what do you suppose we're growing here?
Tobacco.
That's tobacco. Talked to a tobacco farmer. This is a dying thing in Kentucky. He said we don't grow much of this. It's very labor intensive, and the market's just really not there. I got a whole lesson on how they raised it. So every town has a little bit of a quirky thing that you want to stop and see. This is Chester, Illinois. It's right on the Mississippi River. It's one of the few old bridges still across the Mississippi. The person who created Popeye was from Chester, Illinois, and they have quite a deal there. We never got so tired of climbing hills when we were in the Ozarks. It was just relentless. It just this picture was actually kind of on the eastern part. We were almost out of the hills when I took this picture. Last picture, we do some fun things on our bikes. Last fall, Faye and I and two other couples went on the Katy Trail. It takes you most of the way across Missouri. And this was not a trip where we camped or anything. We stayed in Airbnbs, and the Katy Trail takes you through a very scenic part of Missouri with all kinds of wineries to visit. And it was just a very fun trip. And the Katy Trail is an old train track. Runs from basically Clinton all the way to St. Louis. And since it's a train track, follows right along the Missouri River, and it's very flat. It's very easy cycling. The two other couples were not avid cyclists, but they wanted to try it. And I set it all up, and we went for it. It's been a week, had a great time. So we do some fun things too. So, questions?
Just fabulous. Just
We brought Gatorade if you want to take it. We drink tons of water and Gatorade. We really have to worry about dehydration, and we can get really dehydrated at some point.
How many miles a day should you expect to make?
We always aim for 60.
That's what the math said.
That was kind of, but some of them differed. When we did the Pacific Coast, it was more of a scenic, leisurely. We did about 48, I think. It's hilly though, so don't make it sound like it was easy, because it wasn't. But we slowed our pace, and if there was a coffee shop on the beach, we stopped and had coffee and did all that. There's a great little oyster bar we found north of San Francisco. We killed part of an afternoon there. It's what's that?
Bodega Bay.
That's it. Yes. The point I really want to get across is we get a lot of help from completely unknown people. And there's a tremendous amount of humanity out there. Good people. There's not a lot of difference between rural Oregon and rural Kansas as far as the people are concerned. Now, if you go to the cities, I think it's a different story. There's not a lot of difference in upstate New York and rural Kansas. The people are I think they're very similar. And there were so many people who would just open up their doors and let us stay if we needed to. Probably we also participate, last thing I'm gonna say, we also participate in what's called warm showers. It's an online site. We agree to keep cyclists who come through Pratt, Kansas. So we can also use warm showers when we're on the road. And we keep anywhere from 10 to 15 cyclists every summer. They call, usually arrive the same day. We keep them overnight, we feed them supper and breakfast, or take them out or whatever. And they come from all over the world.
How did you get interested in doing this long, biking and doing this long?
Oh, the why question is always hard to answer. We've always enjoyed doing things outside. We started biking across Kansas. It's an annual event. We started doing that back in the late 80s.
It comes through Medicine and...
It has, yes. I stayed in Medicine Lodge one time. Anyway, we started doing that because we were working full time and we'd take a week off and do bike across Kansas. Used to be a lot of people here in Pratt that went. I know there were years when 8 or 10 Pratt people would go. But we enjoyed doing that. And Faye, who loves to talk to anybody, whether she knows them or not, she talked to a gentleman, and we were riding across Oklahoma. And this guy was in his mid-60s. He'd just finished a cross-country ride, and he was in Oklahoma. He was from Boston, actually. He had chosen to do Oklahoma. And Faye started talking to him, and he said, his last bit of advice, if you want to do it sooner than later. Well, we were eventually going to retire, and that was as soon as we could do it. Because you have to take, 2 months, basically. So, yeah.
What's next?
Well,
Bike overseas.
yeah, that's my one thing I really want to do is bike in Europe. I really like to do that. There is an organization in Europe called Eurovelo, which is Cycling Europe. They produce maps, and I've got one picked out. I don't know if we'll do it. I'd love to. We talk to so many foreign bikers, and they talk about how easy it is to bike in Europe because they're built for it, so to speak. They have roads for bikes that are separate from cars. So anyway, that's probably what I'd like to do.
I'd like to just take my bike and travel and have the bike available, but not travel on the bike. just have my bike with me, and if we wanted to run around a little bit with it, but not depend on the bike. Just use the bike when we wanted to run around.
Faye has retired. Yes.
What kind of training do you have to do?
The gauge I want 1,000 miles before I leave. I did one of these trips without much training, and it was not, the first 2 or 3 weeks were not fun. You just suffer. But, yeah.
What do you do for safety? Do you have lights, flashing lights?
Lights on the front, lights on the back. There were times when we were in the desert and the high was going to be 110, we'd leave at 1:30 in the morning, and lights were flashing everywhere. I'm sure we made quite a scene in the desert in the dark, but we were going to be seen. Real quick, you talk about security. Thing that I was scared the most about, particularly in the Yellowstone area, animals, bears. Now I carried this. We saw signs everywhere, bears on the highway, bears on the highway. What were we gonna do on the highway? They were telling you, don't stop, don't stop. We aren't gonna outrun a bear, I know that. We were gonna stop and figure out something. But carried bear spray, didn't have to use it, thank you. We carried this for dogs. Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi. Kentucky, I bet it happened 5 times a day. We had dogs chase us. And we did see some bikers have some pretty bad bites. So we carried halts. This is what the post office carried. And we did use it on a few dogs.
What is it?
Is it a
What
spray or is it a
It's a
sound?
spray.
Okay.
Now, we did have an air horn that Faye carried, was very effective too. It was a boot horn, very loud.
So what does that do to the dogs? How does it?
It's pepper spray.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
they get a snootful.
Yeah, surprisingly, as soon as you pull this out, some dogs turn and run. They already know what this is about. I do carry pepper spray for humans too. Because some people ask, he carried a gun. Got a friend in Dodge City, a woman, weighs about 110 pounds. She carries a gun. She cycles by herself a lot, but she carries a gun. I don't know where you carry a gun. I mean, I could carry it, but it'd never be in the right place at the right time. It's not very conceivable to do that. So anyway, that's
Well, you're on the north side of the border, you don't have to fear the police.
well, let's hope. We've had interesting encounters with the police too, but
Like what?
most of the time helpful, but we got picked up once. Believe it or not, it is legal in some states to ride the interstate highways on a bicycle. We rode almost all the way across New Mexico on Interstate 10.
Wow.
Really safe. It's like riding 54. You got a huge shoulder, rumble strip to warn you if they're getting over close to you. It's really not bad. But we got to Florida, thought we kind of got off route, looking for a hotel for Faye. And we're down by I-10, and I looked at the map, and if we could go 12 miles down I-10, we'd get back on our route instead of having to backtrack about 8 miles. I said, let's go down to the interchange. If it says no bicycles, we won't do it. Didn't see a sign. We got on I-10, got about 10 miles, got pulled over. I felt sorry for the highway patrolman because he was kind of a rookie. He was kind of a trainee, and he pulled up and he got out of his car and he looked at us. We had a trailer and 2 bikes. And he said, I know you're not supposed to be here, but I don't know what I'm going to do with you. He said, I'm going to call my supervisor. So we waited there for about 45 minutes while the supervisor arrived. And this was like on a Sunday, I think. We tried to be nice and talk to him and sweet talk him a little bit and say, hey, we got 2 miles, we'll be out of your way. He said, no, we know you're here, it's our responsibility. So he loaded us up in his car, we got set in the cage, and he took us the 2 miles and we got out. We got ready to leave on our bikes, and Faye had forgotten her handlebar bag, left it in the patrol car. Called the 411 or 511 or whatever it is. Got a hold of the dispatcher, and she said, I started to explain to her who we were and what we were doing, and she interrupted me and she said, oh, we're all talking about you people. So, long story short, they came back, he gave us the handlebar bag, and we got on our way. But, for the most part, they've been very helpful, and they were responsible for us. They were liable, so they were going to take care of us. So it worked.
How often do you have to replace your bike or
This
major overhaul on it?
the major overhaul that has to be replaced is what they call the bottom bearings. But you don't have to replace those for about 15,000 miles usually. And I had to. This is a newer bike. My old touring bike. It probably had 30,000 miles on it. Had a lot of parts replaced. I wanted lower gears, and it was too expensive to make the conversion, so I did buy a new bike. So
Tell them that we hardly ever change a tire.
I went 3 years without a flat.
Whoa.
The only place we have flats is in the southern part of the United States. These are Schwabe tires. They're made in Germany. Not cheap, but they're virtually indestructible. They're heavy. That's why they're not very popular for bicyclists, because they're pretty heavy. But they work. Okay, thank you very much.